Okie dokes.
Good
Hello, everyone.
afternoon.
Oh, there we go. We're just letting everybody in, so this should take a couple of minutes. Got quite a lot of people coming today, so just bear with us just for a moment whilst we let everybody in. We'll be starting in just a minute or so. Just so you know, everybody that is here, this meeting is being recorded and will be sent out to you later. And Happy New Year, everyone that's here. I think this is the last possible time that we could say it, but Happy New Year to everybody.
Nice to see a mix of new and familiar names. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Hi, Bina. So nice to see you on here. So while we're just waiting, one of the things worth mentioning is, okay, no worries, Lisa, although you can't hear me. So, okay. While we're waiting, for some of you who work in larger organizations, we do have quite a few organizations now that share these meetings with the people in their organization. And we often have messages saying, is that allowed? Is that okay? Absolutely. We just want to support the people. So if you are in a larger organization and you know that there are some people who are giving a lot to everyone else and maybe not having time for themselves, please do share these meetings with them and feel free to invite them. Okay. Whilst everyone's joining, Tom, I think we'll get started.
Okay. So, hi everyone, my name's Tom Weaver. I'm from Beam Training, and we're excited to kick off 2025 with positive habits for people. But before we jump in, we have a few notifications, offers to share with you. And our first offer is because many of you have been asking us about bringing this workshop to your teams. So for a limited time, we're offering Positive Habits workshop to your wider organization at a special discounted rate, just for the people members of 440 plus VAT, which is 20% off our usual price. This is a great opportunity to spread the value of what you're learning here today. And if you're interested, then drop us an email at office@beamtraining.co.uk. All those details will be in the chat at a later point of the session. So we also need your help. We're always looking for ways to grow the people community and to tailor it to your needs. So if you've got 15 minutes to spare, we'd love to hear your thoughts on a quick call. It's a chance for you to tell us what would help you feel even more supported in your role and to help us shape our future sessions. So the link to book that session with me will be in the chat as well. And lastly, we have our first People Network session on the 22nd of January, which is next week. It's filling up fast. There's only 10 spaces left, and it's more of a discussion call. So we will be able to, it's more of a networking group where we're looking at how we can support your well-being and your needs as well. So we'd love to see you there. And that's it from me. I'm going to pass over to Leanne so we can get started with this great session.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom. And yes, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year to you as well. What time on the 22nd? Great question, Tina. Tom, jump back on. What time on the 22nd?
Yes, so apologies, I missed that out. It is between 12 and 12:45. So it's the same times as we run these sessions. I'll put the info in the chat so Leanne can carry on.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, we have 20 people on those sessions. So 50% of the spaces have gone already. So if you'd like to join us, please do book on. Okay, so today's session is perfect for the start of the year because this tends to be a time where we think about being a better version of ourselves, maybe even resolutions, maybe thinking about what we weren't so happy that we took into the end of 2024 and what we don't want to take into the end of 2025. And so this session will be all about how you can create more positive habits in your life. And a lot of what we'll be covering through the session today absolutely can be taken to your team members and other colleagues to help them start to introduce some good habits as well. So we've got a lot to cover in the short time that we're together. So we're going to look at what habits are. What is a habit? We all kind of know that we can have good ones and bad ones, but why do we form them? What's going on in the brain when we have a habit? Why are they important? And I guess really importantly, why are they so hard to break? Is it true that it takes 21 days to create a habit? How can I create a new habit and make it easier on myself? So we're going to be looking at that throughout the entire session. We're also going to be predominantly focusing not on breaking bad habits, although we do a workshop on that. We're going to be focusing on how to create some positive habits. So thinking about what do I want to do? And specifically as a people person, how do I want to show up in my life? How do I want to care for myself better? And then really importantly, we'll be spending a lot of the session today on helping you to put that into practice. So I'm going to share all scientifically tested and proven ways for you to create habits, to be able to start to introduce new behaviors in your life with as much ease as possible. Of course, this is very focused on creating a positive habit, but if you have some bad habits that you want to break, you can use the same science I'm going to teach you, just in reverse. So keep that in mind if there's something you want to focus on not doing rather than just what you want to focus on doing. So let's get to this idea of what is a habit. As I say, we all have an idea that habits form us, and we have ones that we are comfortable with and some as we're maybe not so proud of. But what is it? So habits are really essential for us to thrive in our life. And a habit is basically formed as a way of creating a shortcut for your brain. Now, our brain is relatively small in terms of our overall body. Our brain weighs about 3 pounds. And yet, even though it doesn't weigh that much, your brain consumes more than 20% of all the calories you take in. So we can think of our brain as a real gas guzzler. It takes a lot of energy for our brain to keep going. And if you are a fellow overthinker, you're probably thinking, I probably use more than 20% of my calories. Now, because our brain is so energy heavy, it's like a massive 4x4 Hummer vehicle that constantly requires gas and fuel. And because of that, our brain has very cleverly worked out ways to save energy wherever possible. And one of the ways it saves energy is it recognizes that if we do a behavior over and over again, it can cause us to create a habit to do that behavior with very little conscious involvement. That way, we save a lot of energy. When the brain creates a habit, it uses a different part of the brain. So it's a part of the brain called the parietal. And this part of the brain almost runs like a computer program. And we'll come back to that when we talk about creating and breaking habits. Now, when we are running those habitual behaviors, you could consider it that we're on autopilot at that time. And in fact, there was a study done at Duke University that found that about 40% of our waking day we spend on autopilot, which is really quite a shocking statistic. because that means that 40% of my day, I'm not really present and engaged with my life. I'm doing things I've done so many times, I'm not consciously involved in it. And that can be from very simple, mundane tasks, brushing your teeth, making a cup of tea, to really complicated tasks. If you're a driver, have you ever had the feeling when you're driving somewhere that you've driven loads of times before, a relative's house or to your office, and you get there and you think, oh, I can't really remember getting here. Did I stop at those traffic lights? Did I stop at that roundabout? And you have a little bit of panic because you think, I wasn't really engaged in it. That is when we are in autopilot mode. Our brain is so incredibly creative and capable of creating shortcuts and habits. Even something as complicated as driving a car can be simplified and turned into a habitual habit, so we don't have to consciously be involved. Now, I can reassure you that if you were doing that journey and something out of the norm happened, your conscious brain would immediately come online. You would absolutely be present and with it. So you're not out of it, you're just allowing your subconscious brain to take over. So many of us, when we're doing mundane, repeated tasks like driving to work, having your shower, you'll probably notice that you end up having conversations with people in your head, full-blown conversations, because we're not fully engaged in the task we're doing. And so our conscious mind is allowed to wander. Now, there's a real benefit to that. As I say, it conserves energy. It stops us being overwhelmed. Every morning when I walk into the bathroom, I don't have to think, oh, what do I do with the toothbrush? How do I put the toothpaste on? How do I start brushing my teeth? And so the habits have a huge impact on us being able to save our energy for the things that we think really matter. However, as we all know, there are plenty of things we engage in our life that aren't necessarily helpful shortcuts and actually can hinder us. And we can have habits that cause us to be distracted, such as using our mobile phone. We have habits that cause us to perhaps put the wrong food into our body, habits that cause us to bite our nails, or habits that cause us to fiddle with something when someone's talking to us. And some of those habits aren't as useful. Now, at this time of the year, we tend to be more aware of our habits because there's a real tradition of creating New Year's resolutions. Now, it probably won't be a surprise to you, certainly not by the end of this, that I think New Year's resolutions are an absolute waste of time. Research varies, but anything between 70 to 90% of all resolutions are absolutely broken by the 31st of January. In fact, the 10th of January is known as kind of breaking point day. That's when most of us who have had a really well-intended resolution decide, oh, I can't do this. Now, I believe there's lots of reasons New Year's resolutions fail. One is that we often make them too big. We decide that we've been really sedentary, and so we're going to go to the gym every single day and we're going to spend an hour there. One is that we set a resolution often by feeling bad about ourselves, feeling that we should be better, we should try harder, we should engage more, look better, whatever it is. Another is that I think that setting a resolution in the depths of winter is really setting ourselves up to fail. If we look at nature, nature doesn't grow anything during the depths of winter. Nature hunkers down and everything's a little bit slower and we sleep more and we rest more. We decided that the 1st of January would be the start of a new year and that we would be a whole new person at a time when nature is telling us to rest and relax. If we look at nature, new beginnings always come during spring. And so if you really want to make a big positive change, I would encourage you to think of the 1st of March as that potential time rather than the 1st of January. And then one of the final reasons I think resolutions fail is because we don't change our identity when we start to think of a new behavior. And our identity really is made up by what we repeatedly do. So my identity is not made up by the one long walk I go for a week, if the rest of the week I spend very sedentary. My identity is not made up by the one book I read a year, if the rest of the year I'm just doom scrolling on my phone. My identity is made up of those little, seemingly inconsequential acts that I engage in all day, every day. And so if I have set a New Year's resolution that says I must be healthier, fitter, stronger, smarter, whatever it is, but my identity doesn't support that, eventually I will start to slip into that identity and the habit will start to drop by the wayside. A lot of my private therapy work is helping people who have bad habits. And an area that I am so fascinated in helping is people who have bad eating habits, an unhealthy relationship with food. And so often I work with those people and find that those people have perhaps joined a slimming club and lost huge amounts of weight. And then over time, they've started to put the weight back on and usually put on a bit extra. And they're always so frustrated with themselves and hard on themselves because they've had that success and then they feel that they've failed. Now, the reality is, food has huge emotional connection to us. So just trying to lose weight by counting numbers is a really challenging thing to do in itself. But so many of us often decide that we want to lose weight to either be a certain dress size or clothes size, or quite commonly losing weight for an occasion. So losing weight for a wedding, losing weight for a holiday. And what happens is we get to that and then nothing has changed. I've reached my goal and then I go back to my normal life. And my normal life in these circumstances often have the identity of being someone who loves their food, someone who's big and bubbly, someone who's curvy. Those little comments that have probably been said to us all our lives have shaped the identity of who we are. And so when I'm working with people who really want to permanently change their eating behaviors, we don't have a target of how much weight they want to lose. We have daily behaviors that start to create the identity of who they want to be. And that's something I want you to bear in mind when we go through this. And we can apply that to any identity, not just losing weight. Now, one of the things that I see happen all the time, and I've definitely done myself when I've wanted to change a habit or bring in a new habit, is relying on willpower alone. Most of the time, this is really ineffective. Willpower alone is a really difficult way to change any behavior. And the problem is that willpower isn't something you do or you don't have. Willpower rises and falls throughout your entire day. Sometimes we have a full tank of willpower. Sometimes we're flashing on red. And the challenge we have is if I'm relying on willpower alone to create a new behavior, then when I'm flashing on red, I'm likely to go back into more comfortable patterns. So if we look at willpower, if you imagine that every day when you wake up with a full tank of willpower. Well, it'll only be the case that it's a full tank of willpower if you've had a really good sleep, if you're feeling healthy, if you're not majorly stressed, then you might be lucky and have a full tank of willpower. If, however, you had a poor sleep, you've got a cold, you're dealing with a stressful issue, it's very unlikely you would wake up with a full tank anyway. But let's imagine we wake up with a full tank of willpower and we've decided we want to eat healthier. That's our resolution. Well, it takes some willpower to not hit snooze and to get out of bed. So my willpower already, as I'm getting out of bed, is starting to go down a bit. Sometimes it takes willpower to jump in the shower. Sometimes it takes willpower not to sit scrolling on your phone for ages on the side of the bed. You then go into the kitchen and you remind yourself that you've chosen to eat healthy. So it takes willpower to have a healthy breakfast rather than a croissant or Cocoa Pops or something else there. You then get to work, take some willpower, maybe not to tell your colleague that you think they're an idiot. Take some willpower to turn down a biscuit that someone offers you. Take some willpower to be polite to a difficult customer. And you get to lunch. And you remember that you've got a nice chocolate bar in your handbag from before Christmas. But you decide that no, I'm eating healthy. And so you don't have the chocolate bar and you have a salad. You then go back to work for the afternoon. You have some more challenging conversations. You finish work, you have some difficult traffic to get through. You pick up the children and they're not feeling great. They've got colds, so they're a bit more demanding than usual. Your partner comes home having a bad day, demanding, all of which are depleting your willpower. You force yourself to cook a healthy evening meal, don't really enjoy it, starting to feel awful, struggling to get the children to bed. By about 8 p.m., our willpower is now flashing on red, and we think, blow it, I'm going to eat that chocolate bar in my handbag. This is a situation that resonates with all of us when we have used willpower alone. There are times where life will deplete your willpower, so the desire to create a new behavior just isn't enough. And when we set a long-term goal, so let's imagine that we decide that we want to be able to run a marathon by the end of the year, or we want to lose 2 stone, whatever it is. In those moments of low willpower, short-term rewards will win every single time. I want to feel good now. I want to change my emotional state now, and I don't care what that means for me in 6 months' time. And when I meet people who have felt like they failed with setting goals and habits, this is a really common thing that they reveal. They think it's a problem with them, that they just don't have willpower. They're not strong enough. They're not disciplined enough. But the reality is, this is something that we all can struggle with. Now, the good thing about this is that willpower is like a muscle. And because of that, we can train ourselves to have a better resource of willpower. There's a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate, which is a really interesting part of the brain, because this part of the brain is seen to be bigger on people who are more disciplined and have more willpower. And people who are clinically obese have a much smaller part of this brain than people who are really fit and exercise all the time. And what they've found is this part of the brain can change, so it's not fixed. We have something called neuroplasticity. Our brain can change. And this part of the brain can be made bigger when we deliberately force ourselves to do hard things. And so sometimes just getting ourselves to do something that makes us a bit uncomfortable can start to improve and train our willpower muscle a little bit more. If we can force ourselves to delay our gratification, if we can force ourselves to have the cold shower, to go for the early morning walk, to do those things that in that moment we don't really want to do, we can start to flex that willpower muscle. But in habit science, and in my experience, just having willpower is a really hard way to change and introduce or break any habit. So I want to share with you some science-backed ways that we can create some positive habits. So I'm going to share with you the importance of starting small, encouraging you to take really micro steps to achieve your goal. I'll talk about the compound effect, which will illustrate that benefit of starting small. I'll talk about how you can find your keystone habit, and on the flip side, your kryptonite habit. And I'll teach you the language of the brain, which is just a game changer when you want your brain to start working with you and not against you. So there are lots of habit scientists out there that have amazing books and teachings on how to work with habits. One of my favorites is someone called B.J. Fogg, who's a Stanford professor, and he's written a book called Tiny Habits. And essentially through his studies, what he found is the habits that stick are the ones that require very little motivational willpower, And the ones that we slowly build on, when we decide that we want to make a great big change, we're working against our brain and our body. When we decide that we're going to do it slowly and gently, we start to create a lifelong change. And I think this is something we often forget when we're thinking about habits. We want the change to be pretty quick and people to notice it quickly. But actually, if I want to change something about myself, then this is a rest of my life task, not just a 6-month task. So I'm not going to eat healthy just for 6 months. I want to eat healthier as a person. I want to have the identity of someone who eats healthily. And so when we think of our habits as a lifelong change, we have time to build slowly on that. And the example that BJ Fogg gives is that he kept getting told off by his dentist for not flossing his teeth. And he would buy the floss and he'd do it for a couple of days and then he'd forget, be tired, couldn't be bothered, all of those reasons, and he would fail at it. And so using habit science, he decided something which sounds totally ridiculous, and it was that he would floss one tooth. That was his daily task, just one tooth. Now, I don't know if there is a dentist on this call, but I'm guessing that a dentist would say flossing one tooth is going to have no measurable effect on your overall gum health. However, by giving himself such a small habit, when he was tired and exhausted and couldn't be bothered, he would say to himself, I've only got to do one tooth. But most of the time, what he found was because he was doing one tooth, he would end up doing a few more. And most of the time, he would end up doing his whole mouth. But his habit was just to floss one tooth. James Clear, another expert who wrote the book called Atomic Habits that some of you may have read, talks about using that approach with exercise. That your first task is just to get your gym gear on. Your next task might be just to get to outside of the gym. The next task might be to go inside the gym. The next task might be to sit on one machine. And you just build it up slowly. So you eventually create the identity of someone who does this without fighting against your natural desire to take the easy route. One of the things that you've probably all heard is it takes 21 days to create a habit. And I'm afraid that's not entirely true. Now, it takes 21 days to create a new neural pathway in the brain. But when I'm working with clients, I talk about these pathways in the brain as the difference between a 21-day one, which would be like walking through an overgrown country path. So you've got to battle through some nettles. You can see an outline of a path, but it's really pretty treacherous and overgrown. And one we've done for years and years in our life is like a motorway. And so, yes, after 21 days, you start to notice one of these overgrown paths get created. But actually, if my willpower is low, if I'm not feeling well, if I'm feeling tired, my natural urge would be to take the motorway and not the meandering, windy, overgrown path. And so, if I think of habits like that, starting small means that I don't need to force myself to do something that is going to require lots and lots of energy. Once we start small, we can start then to work on incremental growth. So your habit might be that you want to stop being so sedentary. So instead of saying I'm going to go for an hour walk every day, you might start with every hour at my desk, I'm going to walk around just my room and then sit back down. You might want to build some muscle and some strength. So instead of saying I'm going to do 50 push-ups a day, you might start with one push-up. And then once that one push-up is easy, it's no effort, well, maybe it'll go to 2, maybe it'll go to 4, maybe it'll go to 8. And you start to create incremental gains. Now, absolutely, if you're doing 2 push-ups a day, it's highly unlikely you or anyone around you is going to notice the difference. However, this is where the compound effect comes in. We are living in a world where we want immediate reward and gratification, but true lasting change, whether it's in our mind or our body, is something that needs to build incrementally. And the compound effect illustrates this brilliantly. So I want you to imagine that I offer you £3 million right now, or you can have a penny right now, and every day for the next 31 days, I will double it. Which one would you take? The £3 million right now, give me the money, I'm not risking the 31 days, or the penny that doubles every day? So when I ask this question, it's usually about half of the room are just give me the money right now. But if we look at the compound effect, this is what happens if you have a penny and you double it every single day. From day 1 to 20, there's very little growth. So one person's walked off with their 3 million. On day 20, I have £5,243. Not exactly 3 million, right? But as this starts to build, this is where the compound effect starts to really take shape. So by day 29, I would have 2.7 million. So I'm getting really close to your 3 million, but even by day 29, I've only got 2 days left. I don't have a huge pot of money like you do. I'm still 300,000 short. However, by day 21, I end up with 10.7 million. It's actually £10,737,418.24. So this is a great illustration of the compound effect. In the beginning, if we are starting with tiny habits and incremental gains, not many people will notice a difference. But as those habits become easier and easier for you to do, and you start to build on them and build on them, in 31 days, in 3 months, in a year's time, that change will be huge. So maybe you start with doing 1 push-up today, but in a month's time, you might be doing 10 push-ups a day. In 3 months' time, you might be doing 40 a day. Then we start to see a huge impact. So don't be too frustrated with yourself. It's more important that you start the habit and you do it without resistance rather than seeing those huge gains and benefits to begin with. A great place to start with changing your habits is to work out what are the key things that would help me change. Again, something else I think we do in the new year is we decide we want to change our body, our mind, our soul, our relationships. It's just too big. So a great exercise is to consider what is your keystone habit. So if you picture a keystone, that middle stone in the archway is the most important stone in the entire archway because it holds everything together. Your keystone habit is the one thing that if you did it consistently would have the greatest impact on your life. And I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind putting in the chat box, what is the one thing that if you did it from today, every day, you know you would start to feel better? And ultimately, it would start to ripple out into other positive habits. So as an example, one keystone habit is getting better sleep. I know that if I get a really good night's sleep, then I'm likely to exercise more. I'm likely to be more focused at work. I'm likely to be better in my conversations. I'm likely to be happier, to have more positive mental health. So all of those other things start to become a bit easier. Squats. Kate, I've got an amazing little tool for that. I'm going to talk about algorithms at the end. Remind me to put squats in there because it's one I've done for about 10 years. Apply more of what I read. So Nicola, explore that. Think about how can I do that in a small way. Maybe I read something and I go and teach it to someone. More exercise. When we exercise more, we're more likely to feel energized, happy. We know it's great for our mental health. Getting outside, doing some planks, great workout. So frequently, I review my keystone habit of what I can do. Sleep was always my fundamental one. And if I feel poorly, if I really struggle, sleep is the one I come back to. But you can play with it. If you feel right now you've got a great sleep routine, bring the exercise in, bring journaling, bring getting outside every day. go for a walk and play Pokemon Go. Amazing. There's just like, I love that, Philip, because there's a bit of playfulness and joy to that as well. Really lovely. Being kind. Absolutely, Matthew. So when you work out your keystone habit, this is what I'd love you to take away from this session. This is the one thing I'm going to forget everything else that I've been beating myself up on, all the shoulds and all the things that I tell myself I should be better at, I should be doing. I'm just going to focus on this one thing and I'm going to start small. So if you want to improve your exercise and you're doing nothing right now, I am going to walk around my garden for 2 minutes a day. I am going to take the dog on a 2 minute longer walk. Anything that just slightly starts to build that up. On the flip side of this, what's your kryptonite? Those of you who are Superman fans, you will know he's not holding a piece of glowing lettuce in this picture. This was the special effects of the 1970s. He's actually holding a piece of kryptonite, which is the thing that makes Superman weak. What is the one thing you're doing in your life right now that you know is having a negative impact? What do you need to stop doing? There's this beautiful phrase in personal development, and it's you've got to pull out the weeds before you plant the seeds. What do I need to stop doing? So, a really common one, and one that I'm working on right now, is stop needlessly looking at my phone. Absolutely. The first one there, absolutely scrolling. It's such a conditioned response. And I've noticed with myself the times that I am triggered to pick up my phone. So I'm sat in the car, my husband goes in to pay for the petrol, I pick up my phone. I'm watching TV, an advert comes on, I pick up my phone. I'm conditioned like one of Pavlov's dogs that there are times in my day where I just automatically, habitually pick up my phone. Breaking that is really important because if I'm not scrolling my phone, then I'm more likely to be looking around me and just taking in what's going on in my environment, more connected with people that I'm having a conversation with, not reading things that make me think that the world is a terrible, awful place, maybe engaging in stuff that makes me feel uplifted rather than in despair. So I don't think anyone is given any other kryptonite other than their phone, but you might comfort eating. Brilliant example, Philip. Absolutely. Philip, if you drop us an email after, we've got loads of resources on emotional eating that might be really helpful for you. So I'm more than happy to send those over to you if that helps. Um, Looking at your phone before you go to bed. Too much chocolate, Lisa. Absolutely. Too much sugar in general. We know sugar is a mood disruptor. We know that it depletes our energy. We know that it has a negative effect on pretty much every part of our body. So, how do I stop engaging with that? So, we need to consider the things we've talked about. Identity. Do I have the identity of someone that always has a bar of chocolate with them, that brings chocolate to work? Do I have an identity of someone that's always talking about the latest thing they've seen on the news, or a conspiracy theorist, or up to date with all the latest in pop culture? You need to look at that identity that your kryptonite is fueling and start to unpick that. Now, one of the things that you would think is that working with our motivation would be the way to do this. So I know this is bad for me, so I need to stop it. But human beings are so complicated. I've worked with countless clients over the years that have come to me because a doctor has said to them, if you carry on doing X, you will be dead. If you carry on doing X, you won't reach 40. If you carry on doing X, you are going to develop this chronic condition. And from the outside, most of us would think that if we are told that we could potentially die because of something we're voluntarily engaging in, that we would all be able to stop. But that is just not the case. And that's not the case because sometimes those identities are tied up with our self-worth. We don't think that we're worth it. We don't have self-belief that we're capable of changing our behavior and our identity. The interesting thing is, if a doctor was able to, and obviously they're not, say to someone, if you carry on doing X, the person you love most in the world is going to be negatively affected, then most of us would stop like that. So find out why you're doing that thing. What is it that is forcing you to have that behavior? And the final thing I want to share with you is how to start to put these behaviors into place. We tend to, when we want to create a new behavior, create quite a long explanation to our brain of what we're doing. So I'm going to exercise more, but I can't do it on a Wednesday because I've already got a commitment. I don't want to do it when it's cold and raining. And I'm not going to do it a couple of days before my period because I won't have the energy. And I'm not going to do it if I'm off work because then I want to lie in. And we create these stories in our head and our brain just goes, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to even engage in it. Our brain actually works very similarly to a computer in that it works on algorithms. In behavioral science, these are called implementation intentions, but it's essentially the same as a computer algorithm of if X happens, then Y happens. And you have millions of these running in your life every day. So if I walk into my bathroom in the morning, then I brush my teeth. You might have some positive ones. If I am feeling down, then I send a message to my best friend. You might have some negative ones. If I make a cup of tea, then I have to have a biscuit. Well, we can find this out about ourselves and start to create positive algorithms. So I mentioned the squatting one that Kate brought up earlier. At least 10 years ago, I created an algorithm. If I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, then I will do at least one squat. This has just stuck with me. I heard a surgeon consultant talking on a radio program many years ago who said the key to longevity in life is making sure your legs are strong. And so squatting to me became really important, and I squat all the time. And it started with this simple algorithm. If the kettle's boiling, then I do some squats. So Kate, I hope that works for you. So this is just an example, right? If I close down my laptop, then I pause and take some deep breaths. If I feel stressed, then I go for a short walk. These algorithms are far more powerful if you can attach them to an existing habitual behavior. So things like if I'm brushing my teeth, then I practice gratitude. If I'm in the shower, then I take some nice deep breaths. If I'm driving in my car, then I listen to an interesting podcast. Creating algorithms will be really helpful. And in the post-workshop resources, there's a sheet that will take you through specifically people algorithms to help you move forward with that. So some of the algorithms you could introduce as a people person. If I feel drained by a conversation, then I'll step out of the office for 5 minutes. If I receive a difficult email, then I wait 10 minutes before I respond. If I finish work, then I will not check emails on my phone. Hopefully this gives you some real food for thought. We've covered a lot in this session. It's a huge session. If you do decide to take us up on our offer and have the full session, there's actually a bit more in it and it's not got the people element. But we've looked at why habits are essential, how they're formed. We know that we can't create habits through willpower alone. And we've looked at how we put that into practice by creating some new algorithms. So what's next at People? Well, Tom will shortly, sometime today, email you the video of this recording so you can watch it again, you can share it with your colleagues, as well as some of the resources we've created. You can also go on our website, log in and access any of our past workshops as well. You can schedule a call to chat with us, whether that's for a personal support or if you want us to come in and support your organisation. We have a LinkedIn group that we're just starting to grow for people. So connect with either of us on LinkedIn or both of us on LinkedIn, and we will send you an invite to that. Our next free People workshop is with a guest expert, Sal Jeffries, who will be talking about things like decision fatigue and cognitive load when he talks about thinking clearly for people. And don't forget, we've got that People networking next week. just for 20 people, so we can really get under the skin of things and have some great discussions. And you are, of course, invited. If you need more help, then feel free to contact Tom or myself. We're very approachable. We're happy to help whenever we can. I'm happy to hang around for questions. I'm very aware we've reached time right now, so if you need to go, I totally understand. Good luck with the squats, Kate. Thank you so much, Bina. Hope to see you all again at our next session or future events, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, I'm really
Thank
glad.
you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Look forward to seeing you all at our future sessions.
Squats in the office is a great conversation starter, Tina. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so glad. Thank you both.
Okay, and I think we've come to the end.
Perfect.